Hey everybody, it's Bruce from the Compound Light Show. Wanted to go through this one for my memory of next year and so that some people can see what it takes to do a show. So to start, this is a wall that we have here that will house some more stuff next year as well as we grow the show. When we started, we installed two new 20 amp breakers at our main panel and ran the wires up to the attic and back down to this board here. We're running right now it's just two HP 600 watt power supplies. We have them ran parallel so that we can run a bunch of 12 volt outputs, and then they just run down to these bus bars and we can tap into these as we need them for all of the F48 boards that are out in the yard and around the property. These are just little 15 amp Wi-Fi outlets so that we can control the power outlets from the cell phones and when we're away. And then the show starts here at a Pi player. This is a Pi 4, and we have a 5 volt and a 12 volt power supply. The Pi runs on wireless, so I can access it from the desktop computer in the house. And then from the Pi we have a Sound Blaster Pro for audio, and then I have a really inexpensive FM transmitter so that I can look at the show around the property, or when I'm just programming it and nobody's around, I don't have to have the speakers playing. And then I have an HDMI output that goes out to the virtual matrix. And then from the Pi we come down to the F48, which you'll see we're utilizing all 12 ports on the F48. That's connected to the Pi via the Ethernet, and then that's how we communicate. So we go Wi-Fi to the Pi then goes to a Netgear switch, and then the Netgear switch comes down to the F48. Next year we'll have another F48, and then we'll move on from there with additional controllers as we need them. We also house just one power supply and a smart receiver in here, and that's just so that we can have a receiver in the garage if we want to run a show year round or things like that. So from here we have all of our cables that run out of the F48. We actually have a window in the garage, so it made it convenient this year, but I plan on drilling a hole to make it a little bit prettier. And that's pretty much how we have things set up from inside of the garage for now. So outside we have I guess you can call it a frame around the garage that I built. And this was so that we could still utilize the garage if we needed to. If we had any storms this year in Florida, we had some bad storms that came through. So this made it easy to tuck away props if we needed to. So this is basically just all 2x4s, 16-inch lengths. And I just made it into a frame that has casters so I can wheel it around. And then I drilled EMT holes for the EMT in the wood here, and then those line up perfectly with the top so that every 12 inches I can add a new EMT as I add props for the year. So right now I can this is going to be tight because of the paint. We painted it when it was already on there, but these will basically just slide out of that. They'll slide up and I can pull it out, and I can pull that whole prop out and move it to any hole that I want. I did a very cheap, crude but effective way of attaching these. I just stapled them on pretty quickly. It was a last minute thing that I did. And then the Rosa wreath, this is a skin so that we can change the prop if we want to a Halloween or Valentine or whatever other props that Gilbert Engineering is going to offer for us. So that's basically my prop for the frame. And then we have one smart receiver that's behind these boxes that I'll show. One that's open up. I opened one up on the house, but this just houses basically a smart receiver in it. And we have our DC that's coming from the power supplies in the garage, our Ethernet that's coming in, and then obviously the 4 outputs going to all the props that are on this frame. All of these props are held on. These are Inspired Light Show, I believe their name is. They have some STL files if you have a 3D printer. These are modified versions of their prop holders, and they'll also print these for you as a service. So if you don't have a 3D printer, but you can see all of my props are held on with those. Even my rosa wreath, it holds it on just fine. It does a pretty amazing job, even in the winds. You can see it's kind of wiggly, and I'll show you what I did to make sure that doesn't wiggle too much. But this was out during like 60-mile-an-hour winds one night, that one of the storms we had, and they didn't move. So I think we're pretty good there. But you can see everything's held up with those, and I'll continue to print these and use these. They're an amazing part. So, but that's basically the frame that we used for the garage. And again, it's just done. I believe these are 3-inch casters or 2.5-inch casters, and painted it white just for aesthetics. And I can disconnect it real quick and wheel it into the garage if I need to, or for storage at the end of the year. So we also have 4 of these candy canes that we have 2 columns for. So the way that I attached these candy canes to these columns was a little bit more simple. I cut some coral board that came with some props and stacked it so I could get the EMT off of the candy cane coral board. And then I just used these EMT brackets, and then I just used an anchor. I drilled a hole, put an anchor in there, and so I've got 2 of those, one at the very top and then one down here, and that's all that holds the candy canes on. And I did that for all the candy canes, so this one I can spin out of the way a little bit so you can see. It's just got a simple anchor there, and then a candy cane there, anchor, the bracket, and the 1/2-inch EMT holding it up. And then again, there's one at the very top and then one on here. And the ones on the house are the same thing. I did the exact same thing. I don't know if the camera will see it, but in here there's a 1/2-inch EMT with that same EMT clamp. So that's how I did the candy canes on the entire house. So all the candy canes are held on with that same EMT bracket. Really inexpensive way to do it. So that's how we did that. Right, so we have the full GE Impressions train. These are the matrix versions. I think that just the passenger car, this one here, they'll replace the matrix with Merry Christmas, and I'm not sure if they do anything different with the locomotive or the coal car, other than the locomotive can be right facing or left facing, depending on which way you want the train to face. So because Florida, it never stops growing, what I did was I just grabbed some quick 2x4s, painted them black. That kept the train up off of the ground, so that as the grass kept growing on it, it didn't cover up too many of the pixels. On the back side, I'm using the same 3D printed mounts and 1/2-inch EMT with rebar, and that's pretty much how I held it up. Two on each car, and that's pretty much all I needed to do to hold this up this year. This one kind of bowed a little bit, and I think it might be the height. Maybe next year I might throw one just in the middle. But for the most part, again, these went through a lot of wind, and we never really had a problem with them. So this mount here is the unmodified version of these mounts that you get from Inspired Light Show, and like I said, I modified it so that I don't have the big circles, and I can fit it in a little bit tighter of spots. The train itself, before I had planned much of the show out, I had made a couple bud boxes. So this one is actually ran off of a bud box. I got an ant pile that grew on it. I killed it off, but this is in a bud box. It has its own power supply with 3 smart receivers in it. Now this is a 350. Meanwhile, my show is only ran at 10%, so I get away with running my 12-volt pixels with no power injection. My longest run is 382, and I don't need power injection. But again, I run my show at 10%. I might be able to get away with 20%, but I don't have any street lights. I'm kind of off the end of a private drive where there's no street lights or anything, so I don't have to compete with any other lights. So running at 10% works pretty well for me. So that's how my impression trains ran. All right, so our mega tree is 33 strands of 100, and it's a GE impression star at the top. That's the 460, I believe. It's the biggest one that they had, and with the most lights. So whatever one that is, I believe it's a 460. And then I run a rugged pole from Matos Design with his 8-foot base with 12-inch rise. Now, the one problem that I had this year was our soil was very, very wet, so I was having a problem keeping the base down with any sort of supports. So what I ended up doing was taking a 48-inch rebar and a 24-inch rebar going this direction, making a crisscross, and then tying that down with a turnbuckle, and that's how I was able to keep this down this year. So I've got this done in 2 places on either side of it, and that seemed to help this year. Next year I'll probably do a little bit something a little bit different, but actually I have it in 3 places. I have one more spot right in the middle here that I had stuck a J-hook on. This was the first thing I had tried, and this is one of those screw-in flat plate anchors, which is what I also use for the guys. So that's what I'll use next year. I'll get a few more of those. That seemed to be a lot easier than jamming this 48-inch rebar on the ground and then trying to get it out. I'll probably have to use the tractor because it's going to be like the Excalibur. So I've got 3 guys with turnbuckles. Again, these are the turn-in twisted anchors that you twist into the ground that have the flat plate at the bottom. They're not screwed the entire way. It's just at the bottom. And these are I want to say they're a 30-inch one or so, but again, I have to get really deep here because of our soil being so soft when it gets wet that we need to get deeper so we can get past that first layer. So yeah, 3 guys, 1 on each side, and then I've got one tied to our palm tree. Since this isn't going to be up year round, I wasn't worried about it hurting the palm tree, and this is also not cable on the tree. It's got a rubber coating, and then the rugged pole I've got buried in the ground with 450 pounds of concrete. That's the sleeve from Matos. I got a 2-inch bar locally for $100. I think it's a 24-foot length that I bought, and I cut it to the size I needed. Let me spin this side because of the sun. This is the Matos, pretty much just a boat pulley, and you can reverse it and it cranks down and up, and then it goes all the way up to the top with the guys. So that's our tree from the backside. Again, it's 2-inch spacing, 180-degree tree, and 33 strands. That's ran from this rugged box, which again I had made before I realized I was gonna have power supplies in the garage. So this might change next year as well. This one I have 2 350-watt power supplies, 4 smart receivers. So the tree is ran off of 3 of these, and then that gave me 11. I use 11 ports for the tree, and then the 4th port I'm using for 2 of them are for the star. Oh, I lost one of those. I'll have to fix that. But anyway, so some are for the star, some are for some icicles, some are for the candy canes. Just stuff on this side of the house I just threw in this box because I had space for it. And then obviously with the smart receivers, I'm not daisy chaining these. I have individual Ethernets going to each one of these out of the F48. So it's a little bit more cumbersome having that many. This next year with the new release of the F16s coming out and the way that they might be able to be ran, it might make sense for me just to throw an F16 behind the tree and call it a day. So we'll see what the future brings for the mega tree for next year. So I have the whole property outlined, or not the whole property, but the front yard outlined with strips on the ground. Those got buried. Like I said, man, this stuff never stops growing in Florida, and can't wait to get this stuff up to chop this yard down and get these weeds killed back off and either get a lawn back or let it go dormant for the rest of the year. But anyway, so this outlines the entire length of the outside perimeter. The way that I did these was again with a 3D printed part, and the 3D printed part is these little bullet clips. I got these from Thingiverse, and I had someone modify it for 1/2 inch EMT. So if you'd want it, maybe shoot me a message or something, or leave a comment, and I'll try to get you the STL file. I didn't pay for it, and somebody helped me get it, so you can just have it for free as well. But anyways, the pixels just push into them. These snap on and off. This one right here doesn't fit on anything, so. But that's all it is. That clips onto the 1/2 inch EMT. I like the EMT because the 1/2 inch I can bend by hand. I don't need a bender for that. I can just put it on the ground and bend it. The way that these are all stuck into the ground, though, is I wanted to make it super simple to take apart when I needed to. So other than this corner, which this corner is a coupler, so it's PVC. This is a PVC corner, and this is a coupler and on a T. And then what I'm doing is I just rest it inside of the EMT. See, so it's not connected. It just sits inside the PVC, and then the PVC sits on top of rebar. So everything just comes apart really easy. There's no snapping and clicking. And each one of these, that's what I did. It's just a T. I spray painted it black to hide it, and then it just sits on top of rebar. And then your lights, you can just twist. As the grass grew, I had to twist mine up some. So that's what I ended up doing for all of this. And then again, since I can bend the EMT with my hand, I was able to make this radius with just bending it to what I needed the shape to be. So my front arches, I believe these arches and trees are from Boscoyo. I'll probably replace some of this stuff next year as I expand the show. I think I want to get more of the spinner arches possibly. I don't know yet. We'll see. So what I had to do here was I followed Boscoyo's instructions for these, but what it did was it left me about 7 or 8 inches down here that didn't have lights, and I didn't like that. So what I ended up having to do was add 7 lights to each arch, and then I ran the arch material all the way down. Again, I didn't do any math. This is whatever the instructions were on Boscoyo's site with how to do these arches, and I modified it to make it work. So basically it's a 1/2 inch PVC that I spray painted black. You can see it's just like stage color, so you only paint the parts that you're gonna see. And then it's a 1/2 inch EMT along the bottom. And then because I wanted lights in between the trees, I ran a polyline. So all of my outline is one long line in X lights, and it's all ran off of the same channel out here. Is I made a polyline with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with 7 lights, all spaced 2 inches apart. And then I custom made my strings, so I skipped it. So I added a line. I guess you could put null nodes here too if you didn't want to cut and splice and just waste the 7 or however many you needed to get to the next 7. But you can see it just does 7 more, it jumps, 7 more, 7 more, it jumps, 7 more, it jumps, 7 more, it jumps. And then that's how I did that all the way down the line of the arches. So it goes 7, 7, 7, 7 until it gets to the end. And then I've got all the stars on their own channel, or the Christmas trees and the stars on their own channel. So then how I have that ran is on another F48 that I have a Harbor Freight ammo box. So it's stood up, has not had a problem. The funny thing is when you open this, look, it's all I got in this big old box is just a smart receiver. But that's all right, that's what works. The one thing that I ended up doing, and I'll do in the future, is the way that I have my Ethernet coming into these boards. What I was doing was I was using these bulkheads, and they got really cumbersome. So now what I'm going to do is bring the bulkheads away from it and just have it attached out here. So this piece will go in here, and it's not as tight in there anymore like it was before. But that's how I run all the arches and all the Christmas trees and the outline. So this box, the 4 ports, is the yard outline, the 4 arches, and the Christmas trees, and that takes up this whole box, and that's what that's full of. Christmas trees are just on EMT. So they just slip on an EMT, and also the arches. The arches have a piece of EMT that come up to about right here, somewhere around there. Fireworks are still going off for New Year's, so but that's how all the arches are all rebar. And then again, the outlines even here is just a 1/2 inch PVC elbow. I can pull it off and it'll just come right off because it's just an elbow. Put it back on, there's a piece of rebar, and then I just slide it back on, and that's how I do the yard outline. Alright, so because I live down a private drive, which is down here, there's a gate that is on motors that, you know, the residents, the 3 of us, have access to. And because of that, I open the gate at night so that people can walk down here, and we only allowed foot traffic because we live at a dead end and there'd be no way to turn cars around once they get down to my house. So we put a sign out there that says welcome, foot traffic only. We put some cones out there so that we don't have the cars coming down here. Golf carts come down here because we're a golf cart community, and that's not a problem, but it's just cars. But because of that, there's no one, they don't have stereos, and so what I made was this fence post speaker box. So inside there I have a 50-watt speaker and a timer that when they push the button, it turns the timer on for 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes it shuts off. If they push the button in the middle of the 15 minutes, all it does is reset the timer and it continues to play for 15 minutes. Then I have a couple signs that tell them to push the buttons for the music, and then because I run Remote Falcon, a sign that tells them what the web page is so that they can select a song on the jukebox mode. And then I have the 4-inch Marine Polk Audio speakers over here, and then on the back side of the post I have the input for the jack, and then a plug for the amplifier and the timer. Oh, there's also a power supply inside here for the timer and the power and the amplifier. And then out of the bottom of it, I used a 2-wire, what you would use for power injection. I used out, connected it here, and then this basically just runs with some low voltage cable to some other speaker cable that runs across the driveway, and that goes to those other 2 speakers that you may have saw during the arches. And these 2 speakers here are just powered off of there. These speakers are very directional, so we don't really hear a lot in the house, but the audience gets to hear it. So I added 2 speakers here, this 2 speakers over there. It seems to do a pretty well job for us, and we might expand those speakers, add some over here for next year. People tend to walk over there and whatnot, and they can hear the music a little bit better from over there. So as you can see, I have a starburst on the roof. I have that rosa wreath, and also these are the GE Impression icicles. So these icicles that are on this front part, all of the horizontal eaves with the icicles are held on with Matos magnets. They work very well. Each icicle has 2, and that seems to hold them on there pretty solidly. The starburst, I made a PVC and 1/2 inch EMT frame so that I can disconnect that pretty easily and fold it down on itself, and then I can store it on the shelving in the big garage. The eaves that are at a pitch, those are held on with the picture standoffs, and they're just straight screwed into the wood behind the eaves. The rosa wreath on that is held on with 3 of those 3-inch standoffs, and they're using the same anchors that I used on the candy cane columns. There's just 3 anchors into the stucco, and then 3 bolts that you can see. I'll show them when it's on the ground on how that's held up. I do have 10 floodlights. I have one here, I have one here, I have one here, here 5, here 6, 7. Well, I guess I was off. That's 6. This is 7. These grand palms, they drop big leaves, so there's one in there. 8, 9, 10. And these floodlights just light up these posts, and it adds a really cool effect behind the train. It's really, really dim. You don't really know what's happening, but it does make a difference with the backlighting of these props that don't have anything behind them. And in fact, the floodlights themselves add a whole nother dimension to the show that people don't realize is happening. And I actually had 2 people recognize that there were floodlights and asked, hey, what's lighting up the house? Because that's pretty amazing. So the floodlights do make a huge difference. So I think they're like 10 or 20 bucks depending on how you get them, but one channel, it makes a world of difference. And so, like I said, my show is at 10% brightness. The floodlights, though, are at 75% brightness with, I think, 2.0 gamma, and that turns them down just a little bit, but makes them look great. And that's how I run the floods. So under the awning of the house, I have a 70-inch television. I found this to be cheaper than making a P5 panel, and because I could put it here under the house, it worked out well. And we don't have snow, we have rain. And when it rained, I have this outdoor cover. This outdoor cover just folds up on itself, and in the off season I have a 70-inch television that I can put in the workshop garage and watch it. It's on like an office stand, rolly stand that I got from Amazon, and it seems to work very well. Like I said, all of my icicles are held up with the Matos magnets. I'm going to pull this one down. It's a small section that I put on the other side of the gutter. Obviously they're connected when I need to with X connects, and they just pull off. That's it. And there you screw in this round disc that gives you something to connect it to. Obviously it's not going to connect to your gutters. At least my gutters, it won't, because they're aluminum. And that's it. It's a magnet with a standoff, and it's really strong. We had 60-mile-an-hour winds and at one of the storms, and then to put them back up, that's it, and it's back up again. You connect it. So I'll probably leave those up all year, and should be good to go.